Yes.
Well, normally we open with Scott's Yeah Guy, but I'm not sure that he's got a Yeah Guy in him today. We're coming off of the Boardroom Show. It is September 29th, 2021. And Scott was talking all weekend long, and I am afraid he's lost his voice.
Do you want a Yeah Guy or no?
Is that the real deal? That's the voice?
Yeah Guy. Welcome, everybody. Spit. God darn it.
Brutal.
Yeah.
And that's actually better. That's, I'd say 50 or 60% better than it was on Sunday when I last saw you. So we're going to get lots of thumbs up. If listeners would prefer, they can watch the video version on YouTube, and maybe Scott can mime some of his thoughts and emotions. We also are joined by Real Water Sports' own Tripp Forman. Round of applause for Tripp Forman.
David.
Not only one of the finest surfboard retailers in America, but one of the judges of the 2021 Icons of Foam tribute to Pat Rawson.
Hey there, David. How are you? And Scott, I don't know about 50 to 60%. I think you're about 500 to 600% better than you were on Sunday night. But just I just really want to start this show out by thanking Scott and Tim and everybody on the Boardroom crew for just putting on an unbelievable Boardroom Show. That was my first experience at the show, and I was absolutely blown away. And also thank you to US Blanks for sponsoring it and providing all the blanks for the shapers in the Icons of Foam shape off. Just an incredible experience to be part of that all weekend.
Yeah, right on. We were super stoked to have you, Tripp. And yeah, I mean, what a great weekend, and thank you for coming all the way out.
I was going to say, I agree with Tripp. I have been to previous Boardroom shows. I feel like this one, maybe the attendance was 80% of a normal Boardroom show just because of COVID or whatever. But it was actually the most successful effort as far as I'm concerned. And especially in regards to the Icons of Foam, everything just felt like it was real dialed in. The boards that I saw, I wasn't studying them as closely as the judges were, but just from maybe 5 or 6 feet back, I'm looking at 2 boards coming out of the shaping bay. They all looked identical to me. And even from the early rounds, Valerie Duprat versus, I think, Timmy Patterson was the very first heat. And those boards look the same to me. And usually in other years, there's actually discernible differences, even from 5 feet away. This year, everything felt super, super tight. And the judging too, I felt like they took out the calipers. They measured every square inch. I feel like they were a lot more critical maybe than I've remembered in the past. And I just felt like it was a super successful show. So.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you, David. Every shaper in there did an incredible job, and every one of those boards was really, really close. And thankfully we had, Roger Hines is just obviously incredible shaper and craftsman with his own brand with, Roger Hines surfboards. But, he was micro measuring every board and, really breaking it down. I was coming into the judging. It was basically for the judges on all of these boards were Roger was the head judge. I was judging, and then Pat Rawson was also jumping in himself. And, the 3 of us each had our own way of looking at each one of these boards, but it was incredibly close. Every single round the whole way through, or, every heat, every round was really close. And so I would definitely agree with you. If you have been at these shows before and seen them, big spreads apart, this one was significantly harder to judge. And even actually Chris Christensen jumped in later, on Sunday, and after, I can't remember which heat it was, but he's like, man, he goes, I'm sure glad I didn't have to judge that heat, just because of how tight it was.
What, Scott, do you have thoughts on that? Do you feel like it was the most successful yet? And did anybody get slighted by the judges? What are your thoughts on the judging?
Well, first of all, let me say that If I could have Roger Hines as the head judge from here on out, I'd be ecstatic. And I told him as much. It would be kind of cool if Roger like stepped into a role as sort of my head judge throughout. But of course, that depends on who we're honoring, and I respect that as well. But Tripp's right. Roger did an insane job. Couple things. Roger's won it 2 times, and you just simply he transcends any criticism you're going to give him. You cannot deny Roger Hines's ability as a shaper, as a craftsman, and as a judge and as a person. Nobody is ever going to doubt or question what Roger Hines has to say, because they cannot, and it makes him the perfect judge.
Totally agree. There were a number of, because the competition was this close, I think there was a number of people that could have won it. I didn't name all the competitors yet, but it was Chris Borst dropped out kind of in the last minute. Was that because of an injury? I heard he hurt his leg skateboarding or his ankle.
I'm not really sure what the reason was.
I do know he had a skate injury, and I've heard that it's kind of nagging. But anyways, Ward Coffey stepped into his position. So we had Ward Coffey from Santa Cruz, Valerie Duprat, obviously from San Diego, Timmy Patterson from San Clemente, Bill Barnfield, Chris Christensen, Ryan Burch, and am I forgetting anybody else? Is that it?
Also, Ryan Sakel.
Ryan Sakel, that was it.
Yep, and Ricky Carroll as well.
And Ricky
so
Carroll.
Eight shapers.
So Ryan, not to spoil the ending, but it's already been announced, Ryan Burch ended up winning. And this is his 2nd year in a row that he's won. He won in 2019, so he took 2020 off for COVID. Ryan Burch is the freaking real deal. I mean, like, he is no joke. He's a phenomenal surfer, obviously, and he draws a huge crowd anytime he gets into the shaping bay. And I have a feeling there's a lot of young kids who know him as a professional surfer, and they know that he shapes, but it's not just that he's messing around in the shaping bay. Ryan Burch is the real deal as a shaper.
Well, a couple of things. Some people may recall that in 2010, I put on, in conjunction with the Icons of Foam, a Young Guns of Shaping competition. We were down at the San Diego Convention Center honoring Simon Anderson that year. And I had Tyler Warren and Burch and Dennis Kane, a couple of other young guys. I kind of can't remember exactly who it was, and Rusty was the judge for the Young Guns of Shaping. And of course, Ryan Burch won. And that was, 11 years ago. So this guy's been on his game for a long time. He's a natural. It's just, it's one of those things. He's an artist, like all good shapers. He knows how to, transform what he sees and feels with his hands onto a blank. And he's an incredible guy. You really, you can't say enough about him. He's a good human being. He's a great shaper and a great surfer. And we're stoked to have him involved in the show, quite frankly. Each and every year, I hope he'll come back and defend. I'm like, oh, man, because he's a busy guy. He goes off to G Land or whatever.
Any thoughts on Burch, Tripp?
Yeah, I mean, just touching on the point that you made about, a lot of the younger surfers following.
Uh-oh. Tripp, we lost you. Can you hear me?
Our filmer, Bill, who came.
Hold on. You broke up there for a minute.
How about now? You got me?
Now I got you, but can you start at the very beginning?
Yeah, for sure. Sorry about that, David. So, yeah, I mean, just touching on that point that you made about, the younger surfers really following Ryan Burch. And, obviously, surfers that are younger than the three of us. Jeffrey O'Neill, our filmer from Reel, who came out to, to document the event and put out, some good content through our website, which we're really excited to release just because he was blown away by the event as well. But, being able to watch Ryan shape, he's already one of Jeffrey's hands down favorite surfers of all the surfers that are out there. And then being able to watch Ryan shape in the event and meet Ryan in person was his hands down highlight of the trip. So that's, that's a good testament to what you just said, that, a lot of these younger surfers really follow Ryan. But, what I observed is, obviously he does a lot of hand shaping. He does a lot of, shapes and surfs a lot of, very free-minded looking boards, and his own lines in the waves. And I think that really helped him, in the event, one, being able to hand shape as well as he does, but also, with these crazy wild cards that Rawson kept throwing down on the table, for these shapers to shape, because, the what somebody might not know if they, weren't at the show, is that the shapers don't know what they're going to be shaping. It's not like they can get ready for the event. The boards all of a sudden are just basically dealt out. And then it's like, here's your board for this round. And here's the board for the second round. And here's the board for the third round. And they're not your average ordinary boards. I mean, round one was the 7-8 Rawson TC Snap Herd Round the World board. Round two was a 6.5 Impala quad, and round three was like a 9-foot, like full beast of a Sunset Gun Alan Sarlos personal board. So, none of these boards were like 5'11" thrusters that these people are very, very familiar with. They were all very, very unique boards and really challenging boards to shape. So I think that was one of the things that really helped Ryan, is just how much time he's shaping and how much he's hand shaping and how much he's shaping very unique boards.
Yeah, and for the listeners who weren't there, the way that the competition works is the blanks are supplied for the appropriate board, obviously. And what's interesting is that Pat Rawson actually designed a lot of those blanks. So Pat Rawson used to be, he used to design blanks for Clark Foam back in the day. And now he's been designing blanks for US blanks. And so these are actual plugs that Rawson designed and then made boards from, that became iconic boards from that exact blank design. So when the blanks show up on Friday, Rawson actually templates everything with his own templates, which is a huge help for obviously the shapers. So they can just work off that template. They have to cut the outline and then obviously shape the entire board themselves or the blank themselves. But that's the process that's involved anyways. One thing that I noticed about Ryan too is, I don't know, I don't pay because I don't shape, I don't really pay super close attention to what they're doing in the shaping bay, technique and that sort of thing. But with Ryan, I noticed there was like a dance involved. Just the way that his feet move with the planer, he's got like a fluid motion, almost a poetry to what he's doing that is, it's actually noticeable. It's like beautiful to watch, there's kind of a beauty to him shaping the board.
You've got a man crush on Burch, just admit it.
I didn't know until right now, dude. Like until this weekend. I mean, I've been fully aware of him all along, and I'm like noticing what he's doing, and I notice what other people do. After this weekend, I was like, dude, he's the real deal.
I will tell you firsthand that Jeffrey had a massive, or not had, but has a massive man crush on Ryan.
Speaking of crushes, I think we should talk a little bit about Valerie Duprat, because she's an amazing woman. She's in her field, which is biochemistry. She's basically like, the Ryan Burch of biochemistry. She's like the wonder kid, and she's doing a lot for the health of our society through whatever it is she's doing. And I can't speak to it with any authority, but she's an incredible PhD in biochemistry. And then on top of that, she has this incredible young family. I surfed with her husband a lot at Swami's, and she's got a couple of beautiful children. And of course, she's a beautiful woman herself and an incredible shaper, like she's just an insane story. Like, I'm a huge fan of hers. I know you guys are too. Let's speak a little bit about Valerie.
Well, why'd you start that segment off by saying, speaking of crushes, Scott?
Because I know you have a crush on her.
Okay.
I've seen the way you look at her.
Her husband, by the way, rips. I mean, he's like a pro level, back in it, certainly in his heyday, and he still rips. But yeah, so Valerie has, given that this isn't her day job, shaping boards is a side gig, and really a passion project, probably more than a side gig. She was going up against Timmy Patterson. Timmy Patterson has shaped, I would say, tens of thousands of boards, more than Valerie has. And so it's an incredible feat to even, like I said, put the two boards kind of on display afterwards. And they look the same to me. From the naked eye, they look the same to me. And I know Roger, even after taking all the numbers off of those and measuring them, he said it was a super close heat. So huge effort from Valerie.
Yeah, that was my first time meeting Valerie, and you know, I, just like the two of you, I was equally as impressed, like, with her shaping, and you know, she's just really humble, super sweet, you know, really nice, cool to hang out with, and you know, this is not her main gig. Like, you know, she's a scientist. She's not a shaper by trade. Like, you know, she said, "Oh, I just shape on the weekends," and you know, to have her, you know, go up against Timmy first heat of the event, you know, that's a tough draw, and especially with that board, like the board for round one was that 7/8 TC snap. So that's, you know, I don't think for anybody that's a standard board. I mean, that board is, you know, 7/8, you know, under 18 inches wide, under, I think it's 2 7/16 thick, and there's a lot of things going on in this micro chip of a board that you have to micro shape, even down to there was like this little one-dimensional beak on that board, and that was kind of where it came down to in that first heat. Was Timmy nailed the beak and Valerie didn't. But it's like, it's making a perfect beak on a micro chip of a board. You know, it's like the world's smallest perfect beak, you know? And that was the only place where, you know, that really jumped off the, you know, the rabbit ears as far as like what Timmy kind of stood out. And there were some other small differences as well in the business end of the board, but she just did an incredible job. And it was really cool meeting her. And actually in the conversation, you know, this is like, you know, how open she is about this. She's like, yeah, you know, I know who Rawson was. And I obviously I know he's a legend, and I'm familiar with all the people that have ridden his boards and, you know, what they've done in the history of surfing, but she had never had a Rawson board actually in her hand prior to the show. And so, you know, she blows me away in one of the interviews, and she's like, yeah, I watched all the videos on Reel's website to learn about the Rawsons prior to the event, you know, which, you know, obviously I'm like flattered beyond belief that she's saying that, but, you know, this is you know, this is how like, you know, kind of humble and everyday she is coming into the thing. And you know, it was a big deal for her to finish that board in that amount of time. And which I don't think you can give any of these shapers enough credit for, you know, being under the clock, being inside of a clear booth with like grandstand set up and everybody like watching and slamming their phones against, you know, the glass and showing how much time is left, and, you know, cheering them on. And, you know, it's just incredible to watch. So hats off to her. She did a really good job.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you, Tripp, like, you're talking about the beak being slightly off in that. As a judge, when you're looking at two boards, I always wonder, okay, so if the beak is slightly off on this board, but on the other board, maybe the tail is too thick, how do you parse which one's closer? You know, if there's, because the variables that are going to be different are going to be different variables in either board. So how do you decide which has a higher percentage of variables that are different versus the other when it's really that close?
Right. So yeah, actually, that's a really good question. So, I mean, when we were looking at the boards, or actually when I was like, when I was grabbing the boards myself, you know, as the shapers were in their booths, like I was very first just like looking for the things that jumped out the most on each board, and then also looking at the fine tooth stuff as well. And so the ones that jump out the most are the easiest ones to, like, when you're looking at the shape blank after they're done, those are the easiest ones to find. But then you got to really like dig in to the you know, to the fine tooth stuff, and look at the business end of the board, you know, look at the back end of the board where the actual surfing's being done. And Roger had a great scale, you know, he called it ticking all the boxes. And he said that he had gotten that, you know, that judging technique from Rusty. And, you know, while the beak is going to jump off the paper, or jump off the sawhorses, you're going to be looking, throughout the entire board and ticking the boxes. And if you had an equal number of ticked boxes board to board, then you had to start weighting it as to what was in the back of the board. Where between your feet, like the motor of the board and what was getting done. So you're going to give more weight to that part of the board as far as the accuracy of the shape.
So, the ticking of the boxes, certain things like length, thickness, width, those are things that you simply cannot miss. And then so those are weighted more heavily, probably, is what you're getting at.
Yeah, you've got, length, width, thickness, the bottom shape of the board, the deck shape of the board, the rails on the board, the rail thickness on the board, the tuck on the board, how far forward that crisp edge goes on the board, because there was some differences in how far people pulled that sharp edge forward on the board. And then also, one of the things Roger kept pointing out, and again, like to Scott's credit, like if you could nail down Roger as head judge, that would just be awesome for the event moving forward. But he kept pointing out, like in the tail of the board, even because a lot of the tails now, regardless of the thickness, a lot of the tails now are going almost like with a vertical edge down to on the side to where it meets the bottom, so it's just really, really crisp. Rawson still has that crisp edge all the way to the tail, but it's just tucked a little bit, just a slight amount, and Roger kept pointing that out in the tail, and that was something that we're always looking for as well.
Yeah, interestingly, that's done by the sander, and presumably the sander's doing it to Rawson's specs, but what comes out of the bay versus what's sanded on a laminated board can be slightly different as well. Scott, I'm wondering, each show, I think that you've made improvements. You'll get feedback from a competition or the end of the Icons of Foam, and then next year kind of implement those things. Were there any lessons learned in this show that you'll be implementing next time?
Well, it's funny. The lesson that I learn each year is that we have way too many judges, like in my
Tripp, you're out next year.
I got cut. I'm off the island.
No, 3 is actually the perfect amount. I want 3 judges, but you get more judges, you get too many cooks in the kitchen, and because we're on a time frame, like I'm looking at it, like I've got a schedule I have to meet. Yeah. And I've done 20 shows, and I know enough to know that when you get a bunch of judges in there, it's a cluster, But on the flip side of that, it's actually really good for the show, to have all of these legendary guys in there, and they want to be in there and they want to give their opinion. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword. But for sure, early in the rounds, it's good. Three judges is the perfect amount, At the end of the day, it just comes down to Pat, and it's kind of a good cop, bad cop. We get to point to Tripp and go, well, like Pat gets to kind of point and go, well, they said, so it's kind of good in that way. I will say this, that you guys mentioned how hard they work. I think Tripp was talking about it, and he's right. These shapers, especially the finalists, they're working hard on, they don't even know what they're shaping the final heat. They get this 9-foot gun that's just insane, a lot of foam to deal with.
Yeah.
And so last time we did it, Wayne Lynch was like, Scott, we went to lunch or something, and he's like, Scott, you got to give something to the second place guy, And so we have implemented this sort of what we call the Wayne Lynch rule, which is the second place guy now gets $500. And we did that starting Wayne's year with Jordan Brazy. We gave Jordan $500. And of course, Timmy got $500 for second place. And then the other thing is, and I think it was mentioned here already, but Timmy comes out of the second semifinal as the winner, and we immediately push him into the final heat without time for a drink or food, so we have to figure out a way to give that second semifinalist time to kind of chill out, and I've got to figure out a way to carve time out of our schedule so that that guy gets 15 minutes to kind of decompress before going straight in. And that might have been, that's sort of unfair in many ways.
We'll give Scott's voice a moment to rest. So I'll ask Tripp, but I want you to answer this as well, Scott, afterwards. Tripp, any other highlights of the show other than the icons of foam?
Well, if I could just touch on Scott's point, just rewind just a bit. I would definitely agree. Timmy basically had to go 3 hours. If I think I'm right on saying this, but like 3 hours straight.
Yeah.
An hour and a half, a 5-minute break, and then an hour and a half. And so, if there's a way, maybe, even if that last day goes to 5 o'clock rather than 4 o'clock, then he's got a little bit more time. It's kind of like the second semi at a surf event. You're going to have a little bit of time before you go into the finals, and that would be, that'd be a nice improvement. But going into next year. But I think the show and the concept has so much legs that you're going to be improving the what's happening at the show and what's happening with the shapers and the shapes, as well as like just the event format. The event format shouldn't be fixed. It should be constantly evolving and improving, over time. And that would be someplace that would be, a great place to, improve the event.
I'll speak on that real quick before you do your highlight or other highlights. What I like to see about it is the icons of foam is still the center of the show. I always think like shaping a board is only appealing to certain people. Probably there's going to be a lot of people that come in attendance and they want to see the finished boards. Maybe they want to see the celebrities and looky-loo and stuff. But I'm constantly not only surprised by, but happy to see is that they actually love watching the surfboard shaping as well. There's a tremendous reverence for the art of shaping. And so when in the judging, they'll stick around and watch the judging. So when the biggest crowds in the room are always centered around the actual shaping itself. And certainly they'll do a lap afterwards and look at all the pretty surfboards, maybe buy a surfboard or whatever, but they want to watch the shaping. And so I think that's radical. So that's why, you got to keep that as the center and give those shapers the break or whatever it is and refine the thing itself. Cause it's the highlight for everybody.
Yeah. I think if the show was just shaping, I think that you're going to lose some audience or not have everybody, paying attention and being like sucked into it. But I think what Scott's done a really good job on, and this goes to like, hey, what's your highlight of the show is actually how much stuff is going on all at the same time. And I literally never stood in one place for 3 days. Like you're always moving from one thing to the next, and there's always something going on. And so, obviously the focus of the show is the icons of foam shape off. But, there's also, a ton of incredible surfboard companies there with their best boards of the year, that you're just in these booths. Like you're in Roger Hines' booth or you're in Blackbird's booth or in the Lost booth, and you're just perving on these boards that are blowing they're like the icon on your phone, like where the guy's mind is blown, but that's actually happening in real life. You've got that going on. You've got new products and accessories being released for the first time. I really thought that Surfline did a great job with those panel discussions. I thought that those were really fun and interesting. There was a film festival that was going on, not part of the show, but in the same area at night. So there was good nightlife and good surf film premieres. There's great surfing in the area. We had a bunch of super fun sessions. So I think the highlight for me was just the whole package. There was so much going on, some really cool people to hang out with and catch up with and meet, for the first time. Jeffrey, just completely starstruck. I think he wins if we're going to have a trophy, a perpetual trophy for the Man Crush trophy, Jeffrey would win that for sure. But there's just so much cool stuff going on at once. I would say the highlight is like the whole package. Like if you're looking at this show and even if you're like, I think I probably traveled the furthest, unless somebody traveled from like, northern Maine or something like that to come to this.
No.
And
no. We got guys. We got guys.
I'm just saying. I'm saying in the United
there.
States. In the United States. In the United States. So, but if you're like, hey, well, that's a California thing. Like, no way. Like, I think people should come to this show as a destination trip. You know, just because it's so much fun and there's so many cool things to do. And Scott's a surfer. You know, so the show doesn't start till 10 o'clock. You could surf like 3 hours every morning before you come in.
Absolutely. Let me chime in on some things that you guys have touched on. So if I could have left with one board, the board that psyched me a lot was that Smooth Operator by Lost. It's kind of right in my wheelhouse. It was like 6'6" or 6'8". It was a little wider. You know, it had a 4-fin setup, but you can ride it as a tri-fin too. It had a single box in it, like a Bane box. And that board was sort of in my, you know, middle-aged wheelhouse. You know what I mean? Like I actually did not leave with a surfboard this year, which I think is the first time ever. But yesterday I went to a surf shop and paid full pop for a brand new longboard.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not.
Jeez, dude.
Yeah,
you do not quit.
Yeah. I just know what I like. And when I see it, I'm like, oh man. So I bought a new longboard yesterday.
What'd you buy?
So my John Keys, Encinitas Surfboards, he makes really great boards. Anyway, I brought like a single fin longboard thing, but like a, you know, performance edge, like something that I can turn, you know, like not like a 50-50 rail, like log thing. This is more like, you know, I just want to do a bottom turn and walk up to the middle of the board and do my hand jive, you know?
Do you do that as like a celebration because you're done with the weekend and it's kind of like, all right, man, I owe myself a little gift here?
Yeah, there's a little bit of that for sure. There's a little bit of that. I just knew, plus I need a good longboard, you know, like I just needed a new longboard. I actually rode a log the other day out at Swami's and I was falling on my face, man. I was eating shit, you know, like I couldn't do a bottom turn on this thing. I'm like, good Lord, you know, like just give me a board I can do a bottom turn on. You know, I might be able to run up and sneak 5 toes over the nose, maybe, but you know, dude, what am I doing? I just want to do a bottom turn for God's sakes. Is that asking too much? No.
How long does it take you to recover? I mean, not just your voice, but just mentally and spiritually from the weekend.
Like a week.
Yeah. It takes me 2 or 3 days because it's a marathon and my marathon's not as long as yours, but you know, the building of the booth, the prep, the week of is always super stressful. The setup on Friday, the entire weekend, the breaking down of the booth and everything else on Sunday night. It's a real marathon. Tripp Forman emailed me Sunday night at like 8:30. I was like, dude, leave me alone. Don't you dare. I do not want to talk Boardroom Show. I literally just sat down with In and Out and all I want to do is gorge myself and then sleep for like 10 hours. How dare you email me and interrupt my dinner?
I was still working.
Yeah, not surprised.
It doesn't surprise me that Scott bought a board at full retail.
I know.
That show, I mean, that show is like the fluffer of buying a board. It's like a 4-play tease-a-thon. I don't think anybody could leave that show not ready to buy a board. But I do want to point out that I don't know if Scott's statement about like I didn't leave the show where the board is entirely accurate, because I hit up Rawson at like 4:00 and like 1 second about that TC 7/8 snapboard, you know, taking it back to real. And he's like, oh no, like Scott already got that one.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, so what Scott meant is he didn't physically walk out of the building with a board. He was going to be picking it up later.
I just meant a board that I'm going to ride, you know, like that board's a part of the show's history. I'm just going to keep it for legacy.
Wow. Look at you, Scott. So Tripp, when will Real Water Sports have Ryan Burch's boards in stock?
That's a good question. You know, we got to reach out to him and see what he's up to and see, you know, I'm sure his backlog before this show was way out there, but you know, I'm sure after the show it's going to be even further out. But I mean, what a talented guy, like just the whole, his surfing and his shaping are both, on a really high level.
Send him this episode and let him know how hard everybody's fanning out. The people want him. Well, we should give a shout out to Real Water Sports and let them know you guys are giving away a surfboard in about a week, less than a week.
Yeah, so we have something going on right now. It's called the Real Surfboard Giveaway, and it's one of our biggest promotions of the year. And we give the opportunity, and it's free to enter. You don't have to be a member of anything, subscribe to anything. You just go onto our website, or you can look it up online. It's just realwatersports.com/podcast, which is the link from your guys' podcast, and you go there and you enter to win any board in our inventory. So, it doesn't matter if you're looking at the Christensen, 11-foot Chris Craft, or you're looking at a lost, round nose fish 96 5.4, any board in between, and the ground boards, the long boards, gliders, guns like Paizel, paddle axe, anything is on the table for one lucky winner. And we draw that winner on October 5th. So
that is a crazy giveaway. Crazy. You said there's no restrictions when you told me about it. And I'm like, and I just took that. I'm like, okay, fine. And then listeners were actually sending me like that Chris Christensen board that you just referenced. They're like, this is the one. Like, I'm definitely taking this. I was like, man, maybe Tripp didn't know what he was getting into, but sounds like he did.
No, I mean, it's easy for all of us to to put that fantasy in your head, like, oh, well, I'm going to take a 10.5 paddle axe, or I'm going to take a JS Big Baron, or, who knows what they're going to pick. But, for somebody who, that only rides shortboards, they would never want a Chris Craft, or for somebody who rides Chris Crafts, they might not want a shortboard. So it's cool to be able to pick anything in stock. And, we have so much fun with it, and the people who win this thing are just over the moon when they get to pick out their board. So yeah, it's a really cool promotion. We're excited to be partnering with you guys on it.
No gimmicks, no purchase necessary. realwatersports.com/podcast is where you enter to win. And yeah, I think there's 5 or 6 days left. So do not delay, get in on that. And also consider Real Water Sports for any surfboard purchases in the future. I know you guys, your inventory is 1,500 boards strong. How do you get the board to the winner, Tripp?
So the board, and they get to choose any board that they want to, and then we ship the board to wherever they are. So it's either going, it's going FedEx or any of the other carriers that we use, and it's it's a great promotion, and we're looking forward to pulling the winner on October 5th. But you have to enter the win. You have to enter to win. So if you don't enter, you can't win it.
So I, up until I met you, had Scott. You're up next. Oh, or are you raising your hand to win it?
I want to win that thing.
Prior to meeting you, Tripp, I had a preconceived notion that shipping a board is a hassle. It's like, oh, if it's not a local retailer, if it's not a local shaper, then I'm simply not going to buy it. I need to go pick it up. How have you unlocked the shipping equation?
I mean, I think a lot of it is mindset. I think a lot of times people just don't want to ship boards, or they just can't get their heads around shipping boards. But our warehouse team, Zach Johnson, who's our warehouse manager, he surfs every day. He ships boards every day, and in his mind, he's shipping that board as if he's on the receiving end of getting that board and going straight to the beach and surfing it, and so he's literally packing every board that he sends with that much love, like literally, like he's going to be the one cutting the tape on the other side, pulling it out and surfing. And so he, over the course of the time that we've doing this, he's, shipped boards all over the world. And like you mentioned in a previous show, he's actually landed like a full quiver on the end of a dock in Indonesia, like where a charter boat came by and actually grabbed the box in motion to keep going on their trip, because they'd broken a bunch of boards and they needed to get refilled. So, from our standpoint now, with how well our guys pack them and like all the shipping carriers that we work with, like getting all the logistics ironed out, you actually have a greater chance of dinging the board yourself, turning a corner, leaving a shop, than, coming out the front door or hitting a pillar or your car door or something like that, than you do having us ship it to you.
Yeah. And you guys are able to do it affordably too. Is it a flat rate?
Yeah, so it's a flat rate per size. Obviously the short boards are less expensive than the mid lengths, are less expensive than than the long boards and the guns. But each one of those has a flat rate, so it's really easy to shop too. You go to the website, realwatersports.com. You're looking at your board, and then you can automatically tell how much it's going to be to ship that board to your door. Yeah. And the other thing that kind of stands out, I think, is our customer service reps are really friendly and really knowledgeable on the boards, because we live, for those of you that don't know Cape Hatteras, I mean, you can literally throw a rock to the water from our shop, and we've got a great, surfing playground right in our backyard, like where we're able to surf all these different boards and, compare and contrast, and put the right board onto your feet, because not everybody obviously needs the same board. And I think that's one of the things where our staff really shines is helping people get, between our video reviews online and then, when you come with your kind of final choices, that's where our staff really shines is helping you pick the right board and get it set up with the right fins and leash and bag and everything, and get it shipped right to your door.
I love a retailer who is passionate about surfboards. We've done a series of interviews with surf retailers. And as much as they love surfboards as surfers, they talk about how it takes up a huge footprint and there's not a lot of margin on it. And so they start focusing on clothes over the years and all that sort of stuff. So it's great to see that you guys are so committed to the cause and the educating of the cause. So good work.
Oh, thanks, David. Yeah, I mean, what those people say, it's all right. It's definitely right. It's an athletic challenge to keep up with just the number of boards that we're receiving and shipping, and it does take up a big footprint. But for me, I get a few pairs of board shorts and some wetsuits, and that's literally the last that I think about those things. I'm like Scott, I'm just an absolute. I just go absolutely crazy about boards, and it's that passion that keeps Real running with surfboards, and we have an awesome time with it.
Good. So guys, there's a number of things that we can talk about other than the Boardroom Show in this week's episode, but I'm concerned about Scott and his voice. Scott, what do you think?
Well, speaking of shipping surfboards, I want to talk about the California Gold Surf Auction, which closes this Saturday, October 2nd at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We have 45 incredible vintage lots, and the auction's heating up right now. Guys are throwing down some crazy bids. We got some cool boards. So, I just wanted to mention that.
Of course. What's the website? Where do people go?
Auctions. That's auctions, plural, auctions. The vintage surf auctions.com.
Got it.
Yeah.
Google California Gold Surf Auction. So do you want to talk about the US Open, or are you shot? Is your voice too shot?
Well, you know what I'm doing? So I literally went to Real Water Sports website and I just typed in, I went onto their chat and I'm like, how much for an in the pink Donald Takayama longboard shipped to Auckland, New Zealand? And immediately I get a reply from one of their guys there. And he's like, how big is it? I'm like, I like the 9.2. He's like, okay, I'm going to email you right away. I'm just going to get a quote together. So, I mean, the Real Water Sports website's happening, because I got people emailing me going, how much to ship to Auckland, New Zealand? I'm like, oh my God, I don't know.
So you're leveraging Tripp's staff to do your R&D for the surfboard auction?
No, I don't do shipping. The auction doesn't do shipping. Okay. I have a shipping liaison, Dolly, who does a great job. But I just wanted to, I knew that Tripp had his act together, and I wanted to prove it right here in front of me. And the customer service is through the roof on Real Water Sports. And oh, by the way, you better get me off this website because I'm about to order a board.
I was going to say there's 2 longboards in 1 week for Scott now.
Holy mackerel, they got some cool boards. Hey, let me say this. So I'm actually watching the longboard contest, the WSL longboard contest, as we've been talking here. That wave is a pretty damn good longboard wave. I think it's a better longboard wave than it is a shortboard wave. And now that's kind of not controversial, but that could be debated. But from a competition standpoint, I seem to be enjoying myself watching these longboarders getting these incredibly long nose rides in really critical spots. And I'm pretty psyched on it, to be honest with you. There's some really good longboarding going down. I'd be stoked if they got rid of the leashes, though. I don't know why they have leashes in this thing. They should get rid of the leashes. If you fall, you pay the ultimate price.
You know, the problem is that they're worried about tearing the liner of the pool with boards hitting it. So obviously it could still poke the liner if it's on your leash, but there's less opportunity because it won't be rolling with the wave for the rest of the pool. So that's the issue.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So that's pretty incredible that you generally don't watch the longboard events in the ocean, and the one that you are watching is in the pool. That's a real about face.
Well, the waves are perfect. Like, I mean, you can really see some really good nose riding going down. You know, you have to be a good surfer. I think the pool really shows you who's a good longboarder and who's not, and who's like a shortboarder that's faking it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which would be me, you know, like I'd be the guy that would be out there like pumping it, you know what I mean? Totally. But the guys that are style, and you can see guys, because the key, it's easy to walk the nose on a slower wave, but when the wave's fast and you're up on the nose and you got to back pedal back, now I know you're a good longboarder, because I would shuffle back, I would scoot back, you know what I mean? But the really good longboarders are constantly cross-stepping. There never is a shuffle involved.
I have a feeling if this contest took place when the week that you got your Wayne Rich B-Dog, you would not be watching. But it's because of the purchase that you made yesterday that now you're all amped up and studying every aspect.
That could very well be the case.
So I've got a ton of listener line calls. I've got US Open with a call as well. Do you want to save it all for next week when your voice is restored, Scott, or should we do some of it now?
For Tripp's sake, let's do one listener call and see if I get beat up here.
Hi, David and Scott. This is Brandon from Ventura, California. And I have a question that have been thinking I might be guilty of the last couple weeks. This last run of south we've had around here in Ventura, as you guys well know, there has been a stark increase of Wavestorm people and Vals. And question for you guys, if you see people in Wavestorms paddle out, I automatically think I am going to drop in on them. I don't give them basically any leniency. I'm thinking if you're going to actually really take this seriously, you get an actual board. But if you have a Wavestorm, I will drop in. And if you catch up to me, I'll pull out. But you're pretty much guilty before proven innocent. So thank you guys. Love your stuff. And adios and aloha.
Burning a Wavestorm. Yay or nay?
Well, here's the deal, is that for me, this all comes down to, like initially I want to say, yeah, that makes sense. But really deep down, that's not the way I want to behave. I want what has to happen for me, and not for this guy, but for me, in a perfect world, right? Love and tolerance is my guide. And if that's the case, if those are where my values are, if love and tolerance is my guide, I can't just randomly burn people based on what they're riding, because it's just rude, and it's basically, it's not the golden rule. It's not the way I would want to be treated.
Let's rewind the tape to previous episodes, though. You do have a criteria in your brain that allows you to burn certain people based on this complex matrix that only is unique to you. And so it would make sense that a Wavestorm would fall into that matrix if I were to guess.
I just don't think it should matter what what equipment you're on. I think at the end of the day, I kind of think about like, what would Duke on a Mocha do? You know, like Duke would be like aloha, you know, which is basically love, you know, like, and so I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying I even do this, but I'm saying my advice for peace and tranquility is to show a little bit of love and tolerance to your fellow man. And so I'm trying to do that on occasion. I pull it off. Many times my ego gets the better of me, but that doesn't give me, you know, like I don't get a pass for that. Like, it's just not right.
I agree with your philosophy. I think what this listener maybe didn't say is that we all have a preconceived notion when we see somebody walking up the beach with a Wavestorm, we go, oh, that's a beginner. Good thing, because if he's in position, he's going to take off on a wave and go straight to the beach, which means I can just go in front of him and he won't be able to catch up to me. And he did say in that call, if he catches up to me, I will then kick out. But by sheer virtue of the fact that you showed up with a beginner's board, that gives me carte blanche to kind of pull rank. I think that's what he's getting at.
Yeah, look, every situation's nuanced, you know, and certainly, you know, as a general kind of overarching thing, you know, I'm just going to stick to my initial reaction, but certainly there are going to be times when it's like, you know, dude, start the car and get the car going, you know, otherwise I'm going to go, you know, like I got to get through the drive-through here, you know, like the In-N-Out burger needs to be eaten, you know.
I feel surprised at how well people are surfing now on Wavestorms. And it's not, I'm not saying they surf good on other soft tops, but I'm saying even Wavestorms, I see guys riding Wavestorms who can actually rip. And so I used to apply the burn all Wavestorms rule probably 3 years ago, but now you don't really know. You see some people actually battling for position, taking off, riding it, doing a bottom turn on it. And so you kind of have to be a little more discerning. What is the Wavestorm scene like out in North Carolina, Tripp?
I mean, that's awesome you guys are bringing this up because, I mean, like what you're saying, David, you just don't know who's going to be surfing it, you know? Like we had a really fun day a few years back up in New York. I was visiting my parents, and there's this there's a sand point near where they live that can actually get really fun. And there was a guy from San Diego that was there in that same area for a wedding, didn't bring any boards. Then there was a hurricane swell, couldn't find a board. So he went to Costco and bought a Wavestorm. And he ended up being he was a really good surfer. And he ended up being on that Wavestorm, one of the standouts in the session, where people were actually giving him waves because of like how deep he was taking off on the thing and getting barreled on it, and, you know, just and making the thing look really, really fun. Like one of our staff, Chris Rutledge, he has, you know, probably one of almost every board that we sell. And so he's got good boards, but he'll just get shacked out of his mind on a Wavestorm. And he loves doing that. So I think it just depends on who is, you know, obviously those are, that's the minority of the people on the Wavestorm, but you know, you never know when the next Jamie O'Brien's going to be paddling out on a Wavestorm. So you got to just look at, you know, if it's a lot of lulls and there's not a lot of waves and you don't want to waste a wave, then yeah, you got to look at like what they're doing prior to the wave. And,
totally.
But you know, you got to at least give them a chance.
Yeah, I agree. These, with any of these rules, they're subject to change at, you know, a moment's notice because things develop. I've got one more call. Well, I've got a lot more, but I've got one more that I want you guys to chime in on. And this is kind of in relation to the US Open for me. It's Fat Aki calling in.
Yo, this is for David and Scott, Spit Surf Podcast. This is Fat Aki calling. I want to talk about what I think is the most exciting thing in surfing right now, which is where women's surfing is at right now. I feel like women's professional surfing right now is really similar to like 1989 of the men's pro tour, where it's the last generation before the momentum generation is going to come and change everything. So, and you even have like some analogous characters, right? You've got Carissa, who's maybe hard to say who Carissa might be. She's kind of Tom Curran, but also like Stephanie Gilmore's Tom Curran. But anyways, you can kind of go through and see like you got these titans of the sport that smash the lip and are just doing heavy gouge rail turns and maybe just experimenting with an air here or there. And it's really, I'm really super stoked to watch them surf. I'm more stoked than the guys, really. But what you have coming up right now is you have the Aaron Brooks and and Josh Kerr's kid and just a whole host of young women who can boost massive airs. And I predict there's going to be a like momentum generation sweep coming in the next couple of years. 3 years, maybe 4 years. Caroline Marks gone. She'll be like Elkerton in 1996. Like how could even like Courtney Conlogue, like how could she possibly win a heat against Sierra Kerr when Sierra Kerr is going to boost some super crazy air and like do a fin free blast at the end? It's just, there's a total revolution coming. You can feel it. You see it in the clips, much like the early 90s were for men's pro surfing. It's going to change everything in surfing. I'm super excited to see it. And, yeah, I actually think it's one of the more exciting things on the future. So anyways, boys, take it easy.
It's hard to argue against that. I saw some of Katie Simmers' waves, who won the US Open on the women's side this week. She's 15 years old. And it was like she's CT level already. Like if she was up and beating CT surfers in that event, by the way, but if she was up against any of the women in the CT, she could make a final with that surfing. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, I'll go first, Tripp, if you don't mind. So Fat Hockey brings up something that David and I spoke about recently, which is this is definitely happening, and it's definitely going to be exciting in the next few years for sure. But the crucial element here is the judging. If the judges don't reward some of the crazy surfing we're seeing from the women, and then three to the beach are getting sevens, and incredible airs are only getting whatever. Well, so we got to wait and see on the judging, but Fat Hockey, of course, is right on the money here.
And then, following up on that, the Fat Hockey, it's a really insightful observation, and I think he's on point for sure. Whether you're talking sport to sport, or even within the sport, history repeats itself, and each time that sports evolve, they evolve more quickly, and so we're in that, like what he's calling like that 90 era of of switching from just wave-based surfing to going to the air, and it's definitely happening right now. And touching on Scott's point about the judging, the judging has to be there to support going to the air. But I think right now in the heats, it's still, I think in their heads, in the women's surfing head, it's still like, I think I'm going to get more points on the water, because it's the consistency or the height isn't there yet in the heat to warrant it going all the time, but we're not that far away. I think the big thing that the women have going for them right now is the pool. I was last night, I saw a post that Sky Brown put on and in Waco that I immediately forwarded to. I've got a 10-year-old daughter Nova, and I immediately, like, I saw that and I forwarded it like straight to Nova. I'm like, check this out. I mean, she's just launching in the pool at Waco, and that's where the progression and the practice and the evolution of the sport's gonna really accelerate, for the women, and then allow them to take that back to the ocean. The men never had that back, when it was going that direction, but the women have it now, and that's going to be the last thing that they needed, like the last part of the equation to take it to the air in the heat. So yeah, I would definitely agree. That was a really cool question.
I don't see any denying Aki's observation. Like, it's happening, full stop. The disparity between the clips that we're seeing from Sky Brown, Aaron Brooks, Sierra Kerr, Katie Simmers, and what's happening on the tour is night and day. Like, it's this gulf of difference between the skill level. And what's interesting is I agree with what you're saying, Tripp. The pool will allow them to refine it. Aaron Brooks just posted a clip in that same in the Waco pool. She was there with Sky Brown, and she does insane airs. Like she does like a judo kick. She does various rotations, various grabs, giant straight airs, a whole range of airs. But none of it was actually as good as what she was doing during Stab High. Last month, she won Stab High in Costa Rica in the ocean. And there was a lot more, there wasn't more variation. There was more spontaneity. You know, she'd be surfing a wave and a section would approach and she would just throw something. And there was a wild element to it, but she was still stomping it and landing those as well. So I think she's got it in the ocean. To Scott's point about the judges coming around, I don't think there's any denying their surfing. Like the judges are scoring airs highly already. You know, when Carissa did hers earlier this year, big frontside rotation grab in Australia, she got an 8.93 or whatever that score was. So they're already rewarding it. The frequency by which the young 13 to 15-year-old girls are doing it is just, you know, tenfold of what the women on tour are doing it. And I agree with another thing that Fat Aki said, which was, it's going to make Caroline Marks look like Gary Elkerton. Not Caroline. Yeah, I think he did say Caroline, but Courtney Conlog as well. It's like Courtney better start really figuring out the air game if she wants to hang, because she just is going to look like a dinosaur. And we can already make the dinosaur analogy from looking at clips, but once they're in a heat together, it's going to be clear as day, you know? So,
well, the other thing is if we're talking about 6 to 8 foot Margaret River, Courtney's going to be fine. You know, these girls are growing into their adult bodies. Some of these 15-year-olds, like they're just not strong enough. But if it's, you know, competition at Huntington Beach, so a lot of this has to do with wave location. And frankly, if we're in this dream tour situation, if the girls are going to G-Land, I'm down with Courtney.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Caroline specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you there. I've got one more call that I would love to get both your guys' feedback on if you're up for it.
Hey, Scott and David. This is Joe from San Diego. I was just calling to kind of get your unethical pro-life tips or surf tips. You both surf crowded breaks, and there can be 50 people out there on a Tuesday at 10 a.m. So I wanted to know what your keys to success in crowded lineups are, such as making extended eye contact when someone misses a wave, or encouraging someone to take a wave when you know something's better is behind it. And I'm just kind of wondering what are your 5 keys to success out there? Thanks a lot. Take care.
Keys to success in a crowded lineup.
Well, look, the best advice I can give is advice that I sometimes don't take, but if I'm trying to be at peace in the water, then the best advice is to befriend as many people as possible. It's not a good idea to make enemies, no matter where you are, and even if you're in the supermarket. I found that when I make friends in the water, if I smile and talk, generally they're like, oh, that guy's a pretty good surfer and he's a nice guy, I'm gonna let him go. But if I hunker down and kind of put on, like, you know, a little bit of a competitive vibe, there's a lot of alpha males out there that are going to throw down the same exact vibe. And now I've got to deal with 4 guys, you know, going at it as opposed to 4 friends, you know? So the best advice I would give, and again, it's nuanced, everything's nuanced, but overall, if you can make friends and smile and chat people up sincerely, things generally go good for me.
I feel like you're smoke screening this listener. You're going to keep your techniques to yourself and you're going to tell him to do the opposite. So when you encounter him in the lineup, you've got the one up on him. That's what just happened.
Wow. You're overthinking this thing, man.
My keys to success in a crowded lineup, I will share. I'm going to keep some of them to myself, but I fully agree with what he said, where you hoot somebody into the crappy wave. And even if they don't end up going on that wave, as long as they turn around and make an effort for it, you've now got advantage for what's behind it. So that's a tried and true one that always works. Another one that I do is sit right next to Kooks. Like if it's pretty crowded and there's two guys who clearly don't know what they're doing and they're chatting it up, I'll often go sit right next to them, knowing that ultimately they'll block for me. Like they're in maybe a position of priority for the wave that's coming, but they're probably not going to get it. And even if they do get it, they're going to eat it and I'll be next in line. But when somebody who does know what they're doing sees 3 or 4 of us all sitting together, they'll just want to stay away. So I'm using those guys as decoys, sitting right next to them, letting them think they have priority, but ultimately they're just decoys that I'm going to outposition once the wave comes.
Well,
the
look,
other
if
thing,
you want,
yeah,
if you want a really good strategy for crowds, this is one that we used to employ at Blacks a lot. This was a long time ago in the mid to late 80s. And I've done it at some other spots too. But if you and your buddies are out there and there's 30 other guys, we would employ a tactic known as the fake fight. And we would literally get in fake fights with each other because nothing disperses a crowd like a confrontation. And so I would just give my buddy the eye, like, okay, let's do the fake fight. And we would throw fake blows and push each other underwater and scream and yell and splash water. And immediately we'd have the peak to ourselves for like 15 minutes, you know.
That's hilarious.
That's a strategy you can consider employing, but I think the first thing I said is probably more mature.
All right, I'll cut that one out for you. All right, Tripp, you got any techniques?
I would just say bark.
For once, it's not my dog barking.
Oh, let me mute this thing.
All right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, get the pinkest board that you could possibly get, because if you paddle out on if you're a guy and you paddle out on a flaming pink board, then I think you're going to get 3 waves immediately while people try and figure out why you're riding a flaming pink board. The other thing you could do is bark like Scott's dog. Would be a good way to get a bunch of waves. And but no, I mean the main thing, if you want to get waves in the crowd, I mean you got to be where the waves are breaking. I mean, I see a lot of people shy away and hang on the shoulder, and they're just like kind of nervous, and they're not really in the place where the waves are breaking. If you paddle into where the waves are breaking and you aren't talking with people, then you're going to be nervous and you're kind of going to be all frozen up, and you're not really going to catch any waves. Like kind of talking about what Scott was talking about, or David, I can't remember who, but just talking it up and feeling comfortable and being in that position when the wave does come. I think you're going to be in a good place. The other thing I like, one of our team riders, Brett Barley, he's all over the lineup. Like he'll get a wave and then he'll surf the end of he'll surf the inside and the end of the wave for a while, and then he'll surf the mid peak, and then he'll come back up to the jetty and he'll surf up there for a while, like kind of putting yourself all over the lineup and looking for different opportunities other than like the focused opportunity. That's another way. Yeah. And you just keep moving. The more that you're moving and the more you're surfing, like the more you're talking, the more relaxed you are. And it just helps you, get a lot more waves and also have a lot more fun.
So I implement a similar strategy to Brett. It's more intentional though. And I'll surf where the waves are crappier, and I'll stay super busy and catch a bunch of waves and try to kind of surf my best, because that ends up drawing the crowd. So they might be sitting on, and I'm talking about beach breaks. If it's a point break, obviously, where you want to sit. But if there's a beach break and it's like 80% is good over here, I'm going to go surf over there where it's slightly crappier, stay busy, make it look super appealing. And it just, people gravitate to it for some reason. And then once they're hunkered down over there, boom, I switch back to the better spot and then just kind of wait for the good ones, and you can do that multiple times throughout the session, and it tends to work.
I mean, the other thing that's happening right now is like the power of the internet and, Instagram and everything else, is that it's all like the age of exploration is almost gone. And it's the internet is refocusing the crowd on it, like basically no matter where you live, the most popular place is becoming your pipeline, and everything else is gone. You know, like all other breaks don't even exist. And so if you want to be battling out, you know, a 50, 60, 75 person crowd, then sure, go to the most popular break. But the second best break is normally in a vacuum behind the first break, and there's normally like, you know, 5 people there or 10 people there, you know. And so it's you know, not going to, you know, if you're in that situation where you feel like you're getting more waves than you want, then, you know, pick the second best break and have, you know, 10 times as much fun.
Totally. Well, boys, it's been a great show. The Boardroom Show is amazing. Scott, I know you've been too busy to watch surfing on the internet probably, but do you have a must-see moment this week, or a Duke and a Kook?
My Duke is Tripp Forman for coming out for the show and being a part of it, for sure. And I don't have any Kooks. Everybody's good. It's all good.
My must-see moment is episode 4 of Lost Track Atlantic, produced by our longtime sponsors, Need Essentials. And I mean, honestly, this thing has taken the internet by storm. This is a phenomenal series. It was a 4-parter, so this is the final episode. I interviewed Torin and published an episode with Torin last week to talk about it, and that's been well received. But somebody left a comment on that episode and on YouTube, and they said, the ship's sterns section in the 4th part of Lost Track was one of the most phenomenal surf cinematic achievements ever crafted, in my humble opinion, fitting coda to the mind-blowing series. And I agree with them. Yeah, phenomenal stuff, beautiful surf film, beautiful documentary. There's adventure. It's a travel adventure documentary. And of course, Torin surfing is second to none. Have you been watching the series, Tripp?
Yeah, I've been loving that series, and I almost was about to start episode 4 last night, but my boardroom hangover, the Boardroom Show hangover is still strong, and my eyes were like literally just like caving in on themselves. So I'm excited to catch up with that. I mean, highlight moment for me this week is without a doubt the Boardroom Show. You know, it was I've been to a lot of shows, and a lot of shows I just sort of seem kind of lost in the land of bikinis and board shorts and knickknacks. You know, I'm still just kind of blown away, like with what Scott has put together. You know, it's super exciting. If I had to pick, you know, the Kooks side of it, I still can't really figure out how to drive in Del Mar. There's all I think I'm the Kook. I have to I think I'm gonna go to driving school and figure out what all those lanes are for. You got like the driving lane, the shared lane, the bike lane, the sidewalk, those curb dividers.
We lost your audio. Tripp.
Houston.
It's all right. Hey, if you can find your way back in, Tripp, we want you, but we're going to sign off anyways. Yeah, I agree with what Tripp said, Scott. Tremendous effort at the Boardroom Show. It is a true gift. No small feat at all. A lot of it probably goes thankless and unacknowledged, but it's an amazing event that you do for everybody. So good job.
Oh, thank you, David. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I'm always stoked to see you there, and I hope we sold some t-shirts.
Yeah, not as many as we would want, but we sold a few.
Yeah.
So my highlight for the Boardroom Show, as always, is interacting with listeners. And it's not just, I mean, I probably shouldn't, I should keep some of this anonymous, but it's not just people coming up and fanning out, you know, like, hey guys, I'm a big fan of the show. It's actual legitimate, friends, heartfelt stories of people like, again, I'll keep it somewhat anonymous, but it's people like, hey, 8 years ago, you did an episode where you talked about this specific aspect of mental health. And here's what I was going through at that time. And here's how it affected my life. I had another guy come and say he relocated his family to Encinitas because where they were at previously, he's been there 20 years and, you know, it's changed so much, but every week in and out, it's us talking about this, not directly, but just kind of him fantasizing about this other life that exists that we're living in Southern California. And through that kind of constant exposure, it just became a place that, man, maybe I would like to live there. So they vacationed here with their family. And lo and behold, when they had to make a move, this is where they ended up moving, you know? So all sorts of fascinating stuff.
You know what? As I listened to you chat there, something came to me. I do actually have another Duke that's important for me. And it's this morning, I went down to Beacons in Leucadia, and Keen, do you remember Keen?
Yes.
Keen Weber Hayes. Well, today is the 3-year anniversary of him getting attacked by a great white shark at Beacons. And so to you know, I guess to make, not to honor, but to celebrate, I guess, Keen surfed today on the 3-year anniversary of the shark attack. He went out and paddled out at Beacons, and I was down there, and a bunch of people were down there. A bunch of people surfed with Keen, and Keen's my Duke. And there's a really good podcast that I did with him on the Boardroom podcast with Keen Weber Hayes. You should go check it out. He's a fascinating kid and an incredible story. He's a young adult now, but he's just a surf stoked guy. And Keen's my Duke Onomoku.
Great call. And we lost Tripp due to technical difficulties, but there he is. Oh, he's back.
I'm back. I'm back. Sorry, sorry about that. We talked so much I killed my AirPods.
It's all good. So realwatersports.com/podcast to get in on that giveaway. Thank you for that, Tripp. Keep up the great work with Real Water Sports.
Hey, thank you so much, David and Scott, for having me on the show today. And I also just wanted to throw out a huge thank you to Pat Rawson for inviting me to be one of the judges and be part of the boardroom, honoring Pat. You know, Pat's been we've been doing boards with Pat for 23 years or so, and have been friends with Pat that long. And he is just an absolute, he's a great human being. You know, everybody throws out, legend in a lot of different ways to a lot of different people. But, you know, obviously Pat is a legendary shaper, but he is a legendary human being. And there's a lot, more to Pat than just his shaping. There's his music, and he gives a ton of himself, like, to the Hawaiian community in helping people. And he's just been a really close friend of mine for a long, long time. And so, not only, being part of the show as a judge, but, being there, for Pat as a friend, at this special moment in his life, that, where this whole show is honoring his shaping career was just awesome. So I just wanted to thank Pat as well. And really looking forward to next year's show. And I'm here in California. I'm up in Santa Barbara right now, visiting my daughter Nova and surfing up here this week. So I'm just excited to be out here in California having a good time. So thanks.
Looks
again.
Looks like you're in Puerto Rico, actually.
Yeah. The shot in my background is in Puerto Rico. Last winter, I went down there for a good swell, like at the beginning of February. And I've got some great memories and some awesome friends there as well.
Awesome. Any closing words, Scott?
I want to thank Tripp for being a part of the show, and everything he said about Pat is right on the money. So until next time, David, adios and aloha.